Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome to this deep dive. Today we are exploring a potentially transformative area in medicine, how artificial intelligence is really changing the way we find and develop new drugs.
That's right. And we're going to focus specifically on Isomorphic Labs, the company that came out of DeepMind, the AI group behind AlphaFold.
Exactly. Their goal seems incredibly ambitious, to fundamentally rethink the entire drug discovery process using, well, an AI-first approach.
It's a huge undertaking, and it reflects this growing idea that computation is key to understanding biology. So for you, the listener, we're aiming to unpack how AI, using isomorphic as a prime example, is hitting pharmaceutical R&D.
We'll look at the potential upsides,
Yeah.
the current limitations, and also some of the bigger strategic questions that come up.
It's a shortcut, really, to getting your head around a complex field without getting totally overwhelmed.
Right. So let's start with Isomorphic Labs itself. This isn't your typical biotech startup, is it? It seems to have a pretty strong pedigree.
No, definitely not typical. Isomorphic Labs was officially spun out from Google DeepMind back in late 2021.
And that timing wasn't accidental, I assume. It followed AlphaFold's success.
Precisely. The remarkable results from AlphaFold were really the catalyst for setting up Isomorphic as a separate entity focused on applying that kind of AI to drug discovery.
And the person leading it is, well, a major figure.
Yes, Sir Demis Hassabis, he's the founder and CEO, and of course he just shared the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2024 for the work on AlphaFold.
A Nobel laureate CEO definitely sets a high bar. What about the rest of the leadership team? Are they blending AI and bio expertise?
They are. It's a mix. You've got people with deep AI backgrounds from DeepMind, but also seasoned drug discovery professionals. It seems like a deliberate effort to bridge those two worlds.
Okay, so a strong team. What's their core mission statement boiled down?
They state it pretty clearly: to reimagine the entire drug discovery process from first principles with an AI-first approach.
An AI-first approach. And there's this idea of an isomorphic mapping. What does that actually mean?
It's this core belief they have, that there's a fundamental sort of parallel structure between the complexities of biology and the principles of information science.
So biology as an information problem that AI can potentially solve.
Essentially, yes. That AI provides the tools needed to decode and manipulate biological systems to tackle diseases. It's a big vision.
A vision like that needs serious backing. How are they funded? It started with an Alphabet, right?
It did, initially funded by Alphabet. But then, just last month, March 2025, they closed a very large external funding round.
How large are we talking?
$600 million.
Wow, $600 million. Who came in on that?
It was led by Thrive Capital. They're known for backing big AI players like OpenAI, GV, which is Alphabet's venture arm, participated, and Alphabet itself put in more money too.
That level of investment, especially from outside Alphabet, at a reported $3.6 billion valuation. That's a huge vote of confidence.
Absolutely. It signals strong belief, not just from Alphabet, but from the wider tech investment community, that Isomorphic's approach has massive potential. It gives them serious resources.
And how are they planning to use that $600 million? Is it all R&D on the AI engine?
A lot will go into continuing to build out that next-gen AI drug design engine, yes. But crucially, they've also said they'll use it to push their own internal drug programs towards, and hopefully into, clinical development.
So moving beyond just a platform and actually developing their own medicines, that's a key step.
It really is. It shows an ambition to become a full-fledged biopharma company, not just a technology provider.
And I heard they've expanded physically, too. Another office.
Yes, they opened a second site in Lausanne, Switzerland. It's a major European life sciences hub, so very strategic move.
Okay, so Isomorphic Labs. DeepMind origins, Nobel leadership, huge funding, big ambitions. Let's talk about the technology that started it all, AlphaFold.
Right.
For anyone unfamiliar, what exactly was AlphaFold 2? Why was it such a game changer?
Right, AlphaFold 2, or AF2, which DeepMind released results for in late 2020, it was just a massive leap in structural biology. It effectively solved the protein folding problem.
The problem being predicting a protein's 3D shape from its genetic sequence.
Exactly, from its amino acid sequence. For decades, that was a grand challenge. Knowing the 3D structure is absolutely critical because a protein's shape dictates its function.
And function is key to understanding disease and designing drugs.
Precisely. AF2 could predict these structures with frankly, astonishing accuracy for a huge number of proteins.
How astonishing.
Cool.
Was there a benchmark?
Yes, the CASP competition, it's sort of the Olympics for protein structure prediction. At CASC 14, AF2 blew everything else out of the water. Its predictions were often comparable in accuracy to structures determined experimentally, which takes way more time and resources.
And that led to major recognition beyond just scientific circles.
Oh, definitely. The Nobel Prize for Hassabis and John Jumper is the obvious one, but also the Lasker Award, science naming it Breakthrough of the Year. It was huge news.
And crucially, they didn't keep the predictions locked away.
No, that was key. DeepMind partnered with Email EBB to create the AlphaFold protein structure database. They released, I think it's over 200 million predicted structures now, basically almost every known protein.
So they democratized access to this structural information.
Completely. It's accelerated research everywhere. Suddenly, labs could get a high-quality model for a protein they were interested in, even ones that were really hard to crystallize or study experimentally. It's a massive resource for basic biology and, of course, for drug discovery, identifying potential drug targets.
Okay, AF2 was clearly revolutionary. But technology rarely stands still. What were its limitations? What couldn't it do?
It wasn't perfect. Accuracy varied for certain types of proteins, like intrinsically disordered ones. It predicted the final static structure, but not how the protein folded, the dynamics of it.
And for drug discovery, static structures aren't always enough, right? Proteins move, they interact.
Exactly. AF2 mainly focused on single proteins in isolation. It didn't really capture how they interact with other molecules like other proteins, DNA, RNA, or importantly, potential drug molecules, the ligands, or how their shape might change when they bind something.
Which brings us to AlphaFold 3. This was announced in May 2024. How does it build on AF2?
AF3 is a pretty significant evolution. It extends the predictive power beyond single proteins to model interactions between proteins and pretty much all the key players in biology.
So what kind of interactions can it predict now?
Interactions with DNA, RNA, small molecules or ligands, the kinds of things drugs often are ions, and even antibodies. Crucially, it also accounts for chemical modifications to these molecules, which can be really important for function.
That sounds directly relevant for designing drugs that need to bind to a target protein.
Hugely relevant, and the performance improvements they reported were quite substantial.
What sort of numbers did they claim?
They reported at least a 50% improvement compared to existing prediction methods for interactions between proteins and other molecule types. In some specific areas, like protein-ligand interactions, they suggested it was much better, potentially doubling accuracy in some cases compared to older tools.
How does it work under the hood? Is it a different kind of AI model?
It is. It uses a different architecture. AF3 is based on a generative model, specifically employing a diffusion process.
Diffusion. Can you explain that simply?
Think of it like starting with a noisy, blurry cloud representing the atoms of the interacting molecules. The model then iteratively refines this cloud, removing the noise step by step based on what it learned from training data, until it converges on a predicted 3D structure of the complex. It's combined with an updated version of the evoformer module from AF2.
Okay, a different approach. Is AF3 as openly available as AF2 was?
Mostly, yes, for non-commercial research. They launched the AlphaFold server, a web tool where scientists can submit sequences and get predictions for these complex interactions. So the core capability is out there for academics.
But Isomorphic Labs sees AF3 as just one piece of their puzzle, right? Not the whole solution.
That's a really important distinction they make. Yes, AF3 is a core component, a powerful tool in their arsenal, but they stress it's part of a much broader proprietary platform, what they call their unified AI drug design engine.
So multiple AI models working together.
Exactly. They have other advanced AI models developed internally working alongside AF3. The goal isn't just structure prediction, it's the whole end-to-end process of designing a drug candidate in silico computationally.
From finding the target to designing the molecule to maybe even predicting its effects.
That's the ambition. Using AI across the board, target ID, generating ideas, designing molecules with specific properties, predicting how they'll behave, making the whole early phase faster, more efficient, especially for really tough disease targets.
How do AF2 and AF3 specifically help with those early steps, finding targets and designing molecules?
Well, AF2 helped assess if a target was druggable. Did it have pockets a drug could bind to? AF3 takes that further. You can visualize potential binding sites in much more detail, predict how a candidate drug might actually dock with the target, see the interactions at an atomic level.
So you could computationally screen or even design molecules more rationally.
Yes, design inhibitors, antibodies, whatever modality you're interested in, with potentially better specificity or potency. You can explore a vast chemical space computationally before you even step into the wet lab. AF3 might also help predict off-target interactions. Will this drug bind to things it shouldn't, which is crucial for safety.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
Ah.
But we're talking about predictions. How well does AF3 actually perform when it comes to the nitty-gritty of drug design, according to independent studies?
That's where some important caveats come in. Some independent research published early this year, 2025, and results from the CASP16 competition in late 2024 have highlighted some limitations.
Such as?
One key issue seems to be predicting induced fit. That's when a protein significantly changes shape when the drug binds. AF3 seems to struggle more with these large conformational changes.
Which is pretty common in biology, isn't it?
It is. The studies also noted some potential biases, like tending to predict certain active shapes for proteins like GPCRs, even if the drug binds to an inactive state. And it reportedly didn't do so well predicting more complex ternary complexes involving 3 or more molecules interacting.
What about predicting how tightly a drug binds, the affinity? That's critical for drug efficacy.
That was another major point. Research found minimal correlation between AF3's own internal confidence scores and the actual experimentally measured binding affinities.
Right.
So it might predict how something binds, but not necessarily how well, which makes ranking drug candidates difficult.
And there were concerns about memorization?
Yes, one study observed a drop in performance on protein structures that were released after AF3's training data cutoff. That raised questions about whether it was truly generalizing biological principles or, to some extent, memorizing patterns in the data it was trained on.
Okay, so AlphaFold 3 is a major advance in predicting interactions, but it's not quite a magic bullet for designing drugs from scratch, at least not yet on its own.
Exactly. It reinforces Isomorphic's point, really. Their success probably hinges on the combined power of their entire integrated AI platform, using other models to tackle things like dynamics, binding energy, ADME properties, and so on, aspects where AF3 alone might fall short.
Right. So we have this powerful AI tech. How does this promise stack up against the realities of traditional drug R&D? What impact is AI actually having now?
Well, the traditional model is notoriously tough. Think Eram's law, the cost of developing a new drug roughly doubling every 9 years, despite technological advances. It's slow, incredibly expensive, and has a brutally high failure rate.
Decades and billions of dollars, often for nothing.
Pretty much. AI drug discovery companies, including Isomorphic, claim they can dramatically speed up the early parts, identifying a target, finding initial hit molecules, optimizing them into lead candidates.
We hear some pretty bold claims about timelines, don't we?
We do. In silico medicine, for example, has talked about getting to a preclinical candidate in maybe 18 months versus several years traditionally. They actually have an AI-discovered drug for IPF that's idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis in phase 2 trials now, which is a genuine milestone for the field.
That is significant progress. But you emphasized early parts. Is this speed up translating into more drugs actually making it through clinical trials and getting approved? That's always been the biggest hurdle.
That is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And the honest answer, as of April 2025, is we don't have definitive proof yet. The major bottleneck is still clinical development proving safety and efficacy in humans.
So faster discovery doesn't automatically mean higher clinical success.
Not necessarily. We need more data over time. Remember DSP 1181. It was hailed as the first drug fully generated by AI to enter phase 1 trials, but it ultimately failed. It's a reminder that biology is complex and predicting human responses is hard. AI helps, but it's not infallible.
Okay, so while the jury's out on the overall success rate, where are we seeing AI make the most concrete difference in those early stages?
We're seeing clear impacts in a few key areas. Target identification and validation is one. AI can sift through masses of biological data, genomics, proteomics, literature to pinpoint potential new targets. Benevolent AI had that collaboration with AstraZeneca finding targets for chronic kidney disease and IPF, for instance, hit finding and virtual screening. AI can computationally screen billions of compounds against a target structure much faster than physical screening. And then lead generation and optimization AI models can actually design novel molecules with desired properties from scratch or suggest modifications to improve existing ones.
Like in Silico's Chemistry 42 engine.
Exactly. It's about exploring chemical space more effectively, kind of analogous to how AI is being used in materials science to find new materials with specific characteristics.
And Isomorphic Labs is putting this into practice through partnerships with Big Pharma.
Yes, they announced two major deals back in January 2024, one with Eli Lilly and one with Novartis, both focused on discovering small molecule drugs against multiple undisclosed targets.
What were the terms, roughly? Big upfront payments.
They were significant. Lilly paid $45 million up front. Novartis paid $37.5 million up front. But the Novartis deal also had potential milestone payments adding up to, I think, $1.2 billion, plus royalties if drugs get to market.
$1.2 billion in milestones.
Yeah.
That shows serious pharma interest.
Yeah.
And I understand the Novartis deal has already expanded.
It has. That was news just in February this year, 2025. They added up to 3 more research programs under the same financial structure.
What was the reason given? Good progress.
Pretty much. Both companies talked about great collaboration and progress. Novartis specifically mentioned they were tackling particularly challenging targets, and that Isomorphic's AI platform was exploring new chemical spaces that were maybe inaccessible before. They seemed quite enthusiastic about pushing the boundaries on difficult targets.
That expansion feels like really important external validation for Isomorphic's approach. If Novartis is doubling down after a year, they must be seeing something promising.
Absolutely. It's one thing to announce a deal, it's another for the partner to actively expand it based on the results they're seeing. It suggests the AI is delivering tangible starting points or insights, especially on tough biology.
Is Isomorphic only working with partners, or are they developing their own drugs too?
They're doing both. They have an internal pipeline focusing initially on oncology and immunology. Demis Hassabis actually said earlier this year they're aiming to get their first fully AI-designed drug into clinical trials by the end of 2025.
Okay, so potentially their own drug in the clinic this year. That would be another big milestone.
A huge one. It really underscores how these deals, the Novartis expansion, the internal pipeline, it all points to Big Pharma taking AI seriously and Isomorphic positioning itself as a key player delivering on that AI-first promise.
This leads us nicely into the broader ecosystem. These pharma AI partnerships seem to be proliferating. What's driving this trend?
It's really about mutual benefit, I think. Big Pharma gets access to cutting-edge AI platforms and specialized talent without necessarily having to build it all in-house, which is hard and expensive. It offers them speed, potentially novel chemistry, new ways to tackle targets they've struggled with.
And for the AI biotechs like Isomorphic, what's in it for them?
Validation, first and foremost. A deal with a major pharma company says your tech is credible. Then there's the funding up front, cash, milestones, potential royalties down the line. And they gain access to the pharma partners' deep expertise in, drug development, clinical trials, navigating regulations, manufacturing, things a young AI company might lack.
It's a symbiotic relationship then. Are there other big examples of these kinds of deals?
Oh yeah, plenty. Recursion Pharmaceuticals has large deals with Roche Genentech and Bayer. Benevolent AI, despite their recent restructuring, has had partnerships with AstraZeneca and Eli Lilly. In Silico Medicine has partnered with numerous companies, including Sanofi and Fosun Pharma. It's definitely a major trend shaping R&D.
Let's talk money again. We mentioned Isomorphic's big round. What's the overall venture capital climate like for AI drug discovery as of, say, Q1 2025? Is the money still flowing?
It seems to be. Global VC funding actually saw a bit of a jump overall in Q1 this year, and AI continues to capture a huge slice of that pie across all sectors.
And specifically within health and biotech AI.
Still very robust, especially in Europe and the UK. Health tech and biotech using AI were leading sectors for VC money in Europe in Q1. The UK had a particularly strong quarter, largely thanks to Isomorphic's $600 million round, but also other deals. AI-powered health tech startups got a big chunk of the UK investment.
So Isomorphic's round significantly boosted the UK figures. Any other big funding events recently?
Isera Therapeutics launched with a massive $1 billion commitment, and Silico Medicine also raised another $110 million recently. So yes, significant capital is still going into the space, and market growth projections remain very high.
But are there signs things might be maybe consolidating or getting tougher?
There are some indicators. The merger between Recursion and Exscientia late last year was significant, and Benevolent AI's major restructuring and plan to delist from the European exchange, those suggest maturation, perhaps consolidation.
And maybe increased pressure to deliver results.
Exactly. While the AI hype and funding are strong, the broader biotech sector has faced some headwinds, and failures in the clinic, even if expected, serve as reminders. There's definitely growing pressure on companies like Isomorphic to translate that AI promise and funding into actual clinical progress and validated drugs. The valuations demand it.
It sounds like a crowded and competitive space.
Yeah.
How does Isomorphic stack up against key competitors like Recursion, Benevolent AI, and Silico? Do they have different philosophies?
They do have different angles. Isomorphic, as we've discussed, leans heavily on structural biology and interaction prediction, building on AlphaFold. Recursion is more of a tech bio, automating wet lab experiments at scale and using AI to analyze the massive data sets generated.
And Benevolent AI and in Silico.
Benevolent AI historically focused on its knowledge graph to find connections in data for target ID, though they're shifting strategy now. In Silico positions itself as having an end-to-end generative AI platform, from target discovery right through to predicting clinical trial outcomes, and they're advancing their own pipeline quite aggressively.
So different technological bets and business models.
Yeah, different strengths. Isomorphic has the AlphaFold legacy and alphabet connection. Recursion has its automated labs and big pharma deals. In Silico has a drug in phase 2 and a broad platform. Benevolent is regrouping, it's a diverse field, and it's not clear yet which approach or combination of approaches will ultimately prove most successful long-term.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. With all this powerful AI being developed and deployed, what about the ethical considerations and the regulatory side of things? This can't be straightforward.
Not at all. It's incredibly complex, and the regulatory frameworks are definitely playing catch-up with the pace of AI development.
How are regulators like the FDA in the US and the EMA in Europe approaching AI in drug development as of early 2025?
Well, the FDA released draft guidance just this January 2025. It emphasizes a risk-based approach. They want companies using AI for regulatory decision-making to assess the risks and establish the credibility of the AI tool.
Credibility meaning, does it work reliably for its intended use?
Essentially, yes. They've outlined a framework. Consider the context of use, what's the AI doing, assess the risk, what could go wrong, and develop a credibility plan. How will you show it's trustworthy? Interestingly, AI used only for very early discovery, unless it directly impacts something the FDA regulates, like clinical trial endpoints, might fall outside this specific guidance for now.
So more focus as AI gets closer to impacting patients or regulatory submissions.
Exactly. They stress data needs to be fit for use and encourage companies to talk to them early, especially for high-risk AI applications. They've approved locked AI in things like medical devices, but not yet continuously learning or enabled AI for those purposes.
And the EMA in Europe, similar approach.
Broadly similar, yes. They finalized a reflection paper back in September 2024. It also takes a human-centric, risk-based stance, aligning with broader EU laws like the EU AI Act and GDPR.
Do they categorize risk?
They do, based on potential patient risk and regulatory impact. They emphasize the responsibilities of drug developers and clinical trial sponsors when using AI. They have an ongoing AI work plan and actually issued their first positive qualification opinion for an AI-based methodology just last month, March 2025, which is a step towards formal acceptance.
What are pharmaceutical industry groups saying? Like EFPIA in Europe.
They're generally supportive, but asking for clarity. They want to leverage existing regulatory frameworks where possible, get clearer guidance on risk assessment, find a balance between transparency about AI models and protecting intellectual property, ensure global alignment between regulators, and encourage collaboration between all stakeholders.
One issue that always comes up with complex AI is the black box problem. How does that apply here?
It's a major challenge. For really advanced AI models, especially deep learning ones, it can be incredibly difficult to understand exactly how they arrive at a particular prediction or decision.
You can see the input and the output, but the steps in between are opaque.
Pretty much. And that's a problem for scientific validation. How can you trust a result if you don't understand the reasoning? It's also difficult for regulators who need to assess the reliability and safety, and it impacts public trust.
Is there a solution? Explainable AI.
Explainable AI, or XAI, is a whole field of research trying to address this. Developing methods to provide insights into why a model made a certain prediction, identifying the key factors it considered. It's crucial for debugging models, finding hidden biases, ensuring accountability, and meeting ethical obligations, but it's still an active area of development, especially for the most complex models.
Beyond the models themselves, AI relies heavily on data. What are the issues around data governance, privacy, and even intellectual property?
Data is absolutely fundamental. AI models are only as good as the data they're trained on. So robust data governance is essential, ensuring data quality, integrity, consistency, and that it's representative of the problem you're trying to solve.
And privacy is a huge concern, especially with sensitive health data.
Massive. Companies have to comply with strict regulations like IPEA in the US and GDPR in Europe. There are risks of re-identifying individuals, even from anonymized data, so techniques like differential privacy or federated learning are being explored to train models without centralizing sensitive data.
What about IP? If an AI discovers a potential drug target or designs a novel molecule, who owns it?
That's a really thorny legal question that's still evolving. Is it the company that developed the AI, the user who prompted it, the AI itself? Current law generally requires human inventorship. It also creates complexities in collaborations. Who owns the discoveries arising from a joint project using proprietary AI and proprietary data? These agreements need very careful drafting.
And there's a tension between wanting open science to advance the field and companies needing to protect their proprietary AI models and data as trade secrets.
Exactly. Finding that balance is key. Ultimately, the evolving nature of AI means developers need really rigorous internal validation processes and have to prioritize ethical considerations right from the start.
This leads into another dimension, the global picture. AI and biotech are seen as strategically important technologies. Is there a competitive dynamic, say, between the US and China?
Very much so. This is viewed as a critical arena for future economic growth and strategic influence. There have been reports, likely referencing work from the U.S. National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology, expressing significant concern.
Concerned about what specifically?
The conclusion, reportedly, is that China is ascending very rapidly in biotech, including AI-powered drug discovery, and might be getting dangerously close to potentially dominating in certain areas.
What evidence points to that?
Things like China's massive growth in biotech investments, market valuations, their large domestic market, efficient manufacturing capabilities, strong government support, and a growing focus on science-based innovation moving beyond generics.
And the U.S. response?
The same commission apparently criticized the U.S. government's approach as potentially being too piecemeal and uncoordinated, recommending much more substantial, focused investment and action to maintain competitiveness.
This intersects with broader trade tensions too, right?
Absolutely. Concerns about technological decoupling, reliance on Chinese contract development and manufacturing organizations, CDMOs, CMOs, for drug production, and increased scrutiny of licensing deals involving Chinese biotechs are all part of this picture.
What are the critical resources or dependencies in this AI biotech race? What does everyone need?
Several key things. Compute power is one. Training these massive AI models requires enormous computational resources. This is currently concentrated among a few major cloud providers. Companies like Isomorphic have an advantage here, being part of Alphabet with access to Google's infrastructure and TPUs.
Data is another, obviously.
Fundamental. Access to large, diverse, high-quality data sets is crucial. Biological data itself is becoming seen as a strategic resource. Geopolitical tensions and varying data privacy regulations across countries create challenges for accessing and sharing data globally.
What about people?
Specialized talent. There's intense global competition for people with that rare interdisciplinary expertise who understand both AML and deep biology or chemistry.
And the hardware itself, the chips.
Critical dependency. Advanced semiconductor chips, especially GPUs, and specialized AI accelerators like TPUs are essential. The supply chain for these cutting-edge chips is highly concentrated geographically and technologically. We're seeing geopolitical maneuvering around semiconductor access and manufacturing capabilities. Any disruption there could significantly impact AI development globally.
So AI, biotech, data, compute, chips, they're all deeply interconnected in this strategic landscape.
Completely. They represent a nexus of capabilities crucial for future economic strength and national influence.
Let's zoom back in on the application of AI in medicine, specifically towards the goal of personalized medicine. How does AI fit into that vision?
Personalized or precision medicine is all about tailoring treatments to individual patients based on their unique characteristics, their genes, lifestyle, environment. AI is almost uniquely suited to enable this.
Why uniquely suited? Because of the data complexity.
Exactly. Personalized medicine requires integrating and analyzing incredibly diverse and complex data types for each patient. Genomics, proteomics, electronic health records, EHRs, data from wearables, imaging data, lifestyle factors. AI algorithms are powerful tools for finding patterns and making predictions from these huge, messy datasets in a way humans simply can't.
So what can AI do specifically in this context?
It can help stratify patients, identify subgroups who are likely to respond best to a particular treatment. It can predict individual treatment response or risk of side effects. It could potentially help design therapies tailored to an individual's specific molecular profile and discover personalized biomarkers to track disease or treatment effectiveness.
How does this link with other advancements like genomics?
There's huge synergy. AI is crucial for interpreting complex genomic data, identifying disease-causing mutations, understanding gene-drug interactions. Think back to AlphaFold. Understanding protein structures, potentially mutated ones, is part of this puzzle.
What about electronic health records?
EHRs contain vast amounts of real-world patient data. AI can mine this data for insights, identify patterns of care, build predictive models for disease risk or progression, although the variability and messiness of EHR data presents significant challenges.
And wearables, Fitbits, smartwatches.
Wearables and other digital health technologies generate continuous streams of physiological and behavioral data. AI can analyze this data for early detection of disease flare-ups, monitor treatment response in real time, and provide personalized health recommendations.
This sounds incredibly promising. But tailoring medicine based on data raises concerns about fairness and bias, doesn't it? If the data itself is biased.
That is a critical risk that needs careful management. Algorithmic bias is a major concern in AI healthcare. If the data used to train AI models reflects existing societal biases or health inequities, the AI models can inherit and even amplify those biases.
Can you give an example?
There was a well-known case in the U.S. where an algorithm widely used in hospitals to predict healthcare needs systematically underestimated the health needs of Black patients compared to white patients with the same level of illness. This was because it used healthcare costs as a proxy for need, and Black patients historically incurred lower costs due to systemic inequities in access and treatment.
So the algorithm learned a biased proxy for health needs. What are the main sources of this kind of bias?
Several things. Underrepresentation in training data is a big one. If certain demographic groups based on race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, geography are underrepresented in the data used to build the AI, it may not perform well for those groups. Clinical trial data, for example, has historically skewed towards certain populations.
Wow.
Biased clinical practices embedded in the data itself. Historical diagnostic or treatment biases can get baked into the algorithms, and failure to adequately incorporate socioeconomic factors, sometimes called small data, which profoundly impact health outcomes. An algorithm might miss crucial context if it only looks at clinical variables.
And the danger is that these biased algorithms could actually worsen health disparities.
Exactly. They could lead to misdiagnosis, inappropriate treatment recommendations, or unequal allocation of resources, further disadvantaging already marginalized groups.
So what's being done to mitigate these risks? How can we make AI for personalized medicine equitable?
It requires very conscious and proactive effort. Things like ensuring training data sets are diverse and representative, developing fairness-aware algorithms designed to minimize disparities in performance across different groups, rigorously evaluating model performance not just overall, but specifically for various demographic subgroups.
Transparency helps too, presumably.
Yes, transparency about how models are built and validated, and crucially, incorporating social determinants of health into the models where appropriate and possible to provide better context. It's an ongoing challenge that requires collaboration between AI developers, clinicians, ethicists, patient advocates, and policymakers.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground: the technology, the companies, the ecosystem, ethics, global competition, personalized medicine. Let's take a step back and offer some critical perspective. Is there a risk of overhyping AI in drug discovery?
I think that's a very fair question. History gives us some context here. The pharmaceutical industry has seen previous waves of technological enthusiasm that promise to revolutionize R&D genomics, combinatorial chemistry, high-throughput screening.
And while those technologies definitely helped and are now standard tools, they didn't quite deliver the massive order of magnitude improvements in overall R&D efficiency that were initially predicted. Eurum's law didn't get repealed.
Exactly. So while AI is genuinely powerful and different in many ways, a pragmatic approach is needed. We should be excited about the potential, but also wary of inflated expectations, and remember that biology remains incredibly complex.
What are some of the core limitations or challenges that temper the hype? We touched on data already.
Data remains foundational, and it's often imperfect. Issues of data quality and consistency noise, missing values, lack of standardization across different sources can significantly hinder AI model performance.
And the data bias issue we just discussed.
Yes, biased data leading to biased algorithms is a huge challenge. Plus, sometimes the necessary data just isn't available, especially for rare diseases, novel biological targets, or due to privacy restrictions limiting data sharing. Data scarcity can be as big a problem as data quality.
What about the AI models themselves, beyond the specific AF3 limitations we discussed?
There are inherent limitations in current AI. Capturing the full dynamism and intricate feedback loops of biological systems is still incredibly hard. Models are often simplifications.
And validation is tough.
Very tough. It's not enough for a model to perform well on its training data. It needs robust validation on independent datasets and, crucially, experimental confirmation in the lab and eventually in the clinic. Validating black box models adds another layer of complexity. There are ongoing efforts to develop standardized frameworks for e-validation of computational models, but it's still evolving.
We also talked about regulatory hurdles. Is there a risk that things could slow down or public trust could erode?
There's definitely potential for regulatory friction. If there are high-profile failures of AI-driven drug candidates in clinical trials, it could lead to increased scrutiny and potentially slow down adoption.
And public and physician trust is vital for AI to be accepted in healthcare.
Absolutely. Concerns about reliability, the potential for bias, the opacity of some models, and data privacy. All of these can impact trust. Building and maintaining that trust requires transparency, demonstrable benefits, rigorous validation, strong ethical safeguards, and open communication with patients, doctors, and the public.
So, to wrap things up, AI clearly holds significant potential to reshape medicine, especially drug discovery. But it's not magic.
No, it's a powerful tool, but one with substantial challenges and limitations. It seems very capable of accelerating certain early-stage research activities, identifying targets, designing molecules computationally.
But the impact on actual clinical success rates, getting more effective drugs approved faster, that's still largely unproven as of today, April 2025.
Correct. And current AI models still struggle with the full complexity of biology. Foundational issues around data quality, availability, and bias remain critical bottlenecks.
And Isomorphic Labs, our central example today.
They are a compelling case study. They have the AlphaFold legacy, deep AI expertise, substantial funding, key pharma partnerships, all major strengths. But like everyone else in this space, the ultimate test will be demonstrating tangible clinical value from their AI-first approach, translating computational prowess into drugs that work safely and effectively in patients.
It seems the future here really depends on a complex interplay of factors.
Definitely. Continued technological innovation, navigating ethical considerations, evolving regulatory landscapes, economic drivers and investment, and even geopolitical dynamics will all shape how AI transforms medicine.
So perhaps a final thought for our listeners to ponder. How do we balance the undeniable excitement around AI in medicine with the persistent, complex realities of biology and the long road of drug development? What are the most critical milestones we should watch for in the next few years to truly gauge if AI is delivering on its transformative promise for human health?
And perhaps also, what role should individuals as patients, citizens, maybe even researchers or policymakers play in ensuring these powerful technologies are developed and deployed ethically and equitably? Lots to think about.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.